Imagine losing your husband the exact moment your daughter takes her first breath. Now imagine facing the world alone with a 7-month-old baby, desperate for just one moment of peace. That's exactly what Rebecca M.O. thought she'd found in the Smoky Mountains on September 12, 2019. But what she found instead would haunt investigators for years and challenge everything we believe about time itself. At 2:47 p.m., Rebecca sent a photo that would become evidence in one of the most disturbing cases in national park history. By 3:15 p.m., both she and baby Z had vanished into thin air. What you're about to hear will make you question reality. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. I'm Shadows by Barry, and if you're new here, we dive deep into cases that refuse to stay buried. Hit subscribe right now, because what we uncovered in this case will shock you. 5 years after Rebecca and Z disappeared, hikers found something wedged in a rock crevice that shouldn't have existed. Something that made veteran park rangers question their own sanity. Picture this. You're a young widow, exhausted beyond belief, carrying your infant daughter through what should be a peaceful nature walk. But imagine if that walk led you into something that exists outside our understanding of space and time. Because that's exactly what happened to Rebecca M.O., and the proof was hidden in the mountains for 5 terrifying years. Rebecca Mo's story began with the cruelest twist of fate imaginable. On February 15th, 2019, while she was in labor with their first child, her husband Marcus suffered a massive heart attack in the hospital waiting room. He died holding their daughter's hospital bracelet, never knowing he'd had a baby girl. Can you imagine that moment? The joy of new life and the devastation of loss happening simultaneously? That's the emotional state Rebecca was living in every single day. At 34, Rebecca became a widow and single mother in the same breath. What she didn't know was that this tragedy was just the beginning of her nightmare. For 7 months, Rebecca barely left her Atlanta apartment. Friends described her as a ghost of her former self, going through the motions of motherhood while drowning in grief. But on September 12th, something changed. Rebecca made a decision that would lead her and baby Z straight into the heart of darkness. She decided they both needed to breathe again. Rebecca had visited the Smoky Mountains once before, on her honeymoon with Marcus 3 years earlier. It was the last place she remembered being truly happy. Think about that place where you felt most at peace. Now imagine going back there, hoping to find some fragment of joy for your suffering child. Rebecca packed Z's diaper bag with military precision. Formula, diapers, baby monitor, first aid kit. She was the kind of mother who planned for every possible scenario. What she couldn't plan for was encountering something that defied all logical explanation. The drive to Tennessee took 4 hours. Rebecca later texted her sister that Z had slept the entire way, as if she somehow knew her mommy needed this moment of peace. They arrived at the Sugarlands Visitor Center at 1:30 p.m. Rebecca chose what looked like the easiest trail, a gentle loop perfect for a mother carrying an infant. But here's what Rebecca didn't know. That particular trail had been the site of 3 unexplained disappearances in the past 2 years. Park rangers had quietly flagged it for investigation. By 3:15 p.m., Rebecca and Z would become the 4th and 5th names on that list. At 2:47 p.m., Rebecca sent what would become the most analyzed photograph in missing persons history. Imagine receiving a photo from your loved one that looks completely normal, but contains details that will haunt investigators for years. The photo showed baby Z sleeping peacefully in her carrier, surrounded by beautiful autumn foliage. But experts later discovered something in the background that shouldn't have been possible. The metadata from Rebecca's phone showed she was in an area called Devil's Backbone, a remote section of trail that had been closed for maintenance for over a year. How did Rebecca end up in a closed section park? And why didn't she mention it in her text? Her message was simple. Z loves the mountains just like Daddy did. We're both healing. But phone records show something chilling. Picture this. You send a loving text message to your family. But what you don't realize is that the timestamp on that message is impossible. Rebecca's final text was sent at 2:47 p.m. according to her phone. But cell tower records show that same message was received by her sister at 2:47 p.m. the day before. Investigators would later call this their first evidence that something in those mountains was manipulating time itself. If your mind is already spinning trying to understand how a text message can arrive before it's sent, hit that like button, because this case gets exponentially more disturbing. I want you to comment below. What would you do if you received a message from a family member that was time-stamped in the future? Because Rebecca's sister Sarah faced exactly that situation, and her reaction would save crucial evidence that investigators almost missed. What I'm about to tell you about the search operation will show you why this case broke every rule in the missing persons playbook. When Rebecca and baby Z failed to return by sunset, her sister Sarah didn't hesitate. She called park rangers at 7:23 p.m., less than 4 hours after they were supposed to return. Imagine being the park ranger who takes that call. A widow with a 7-month-old baby, missing in 800 square miles of wilderness as darkness falls. Ranger Tom Valdez mobilized the largest search operation in the park's recent history. By midnight, they had 47 searchers, 3 helicopters, and thermal imaging equipment combing the mountains. What they found in the first 6 hours of searching would make seasoned professionals question their own sanity. Search dogs picked up Rebecca and Z's scent at the Sugarlands trailhead. The scent trail led exactly where you'd expect, down the main path toward the easier family trails. But then something impossible happened. 3 different tracking dogs, from 3 different handlers, all lost the scent at the exact same spot. Picture a bloodhound that can track a scent through rain, snow, and wind suddenly acting like the trail simply ended. Not diverted, not masked, ended. The spot where all 3 dogs lost the trail was marked by a simple wooden sign. Trail closed for maintenance. The same trail where Rebecca's phone claimed she took that final photo. But here's what made the Rangers' blood run cold. That trail had been closed for 13 months. The closure signs were weathered and faded. No human had walked that path in over a year. So how did Rebecca and baby Z end up there? And more importantly, how did they vanish from a place they should never have been able to reach? Day 2 of the search brought the first piece of physical evidence, and it made absolutely no sense. A volunteer searcher found one of baby Z's socks hanging from a tree branch, but the tree was 12 miles from where Rebecca was last seen, in the opposite direction from any trail she could have taken. Imagine finding your missing baby's sock in an impossible location. Rebecca's sister Sarah collapsed when they showed her the tiny pink sock with Z's name embroidered on it. But the forensic analysis of that sock revealed something that made investigators question the laws of physics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez examined the sock under a microscope. What she found challenged everything she knew about fabric degradation and environmental exposure. Think about a baby sock that's been exposed to mountain weather, rain, and UV radiation. After 24 hours, you'd expect to see some signs of weathering, right? Dr. Rodriguez found 0 evidence of environmental exposure. The sock looked like it had been placed on that tree branch seconds before it was discovered. But the truly disturbing part was the pollen analysis. The sock contained pollen from plants that only bloom in spring. It was September. How do you find spring pollen on a sock in autumn? How do you find evidence of your missing persons in places they couldn't have reached? Day 3 brought another impossible discovery that would reshape the entire investigation. Rebecca's phone was found by hikers on a popular trail, fully charged and containing dozens of photos and videos that Rebecca never took. Photos that showed Rebecca and baby Z in locations throughout the park, taken weeks after they disappeared. The discovery of Rebecca's phone should have been a breakthrough. Instead, it became the case's most disturbing mystery. Imagine finding your missing loved one's phone, hoping for answers, only to discover photos that prove the impossible. The phone contained 47 new photos and 12 video clips, all featuring Rebecca and baby Z. The problem? The timestamps showed they were taken up to 3 weeks after the pair had vanished. But the content of those photos would make digital forensics experts question their own expertise. In the videos, you can hear Rebecca talking to Z, her voice growing more desperate with each recording. "Mommy's trying to find a way home, baby girl," she whispers in one clip. In another video, Rebecca looks directly at the camera and says something that still gives investigators nightmares. She says, "If someone finds this phone, know that we're not in the same one as you. The mountains are alive and they're hungry." Picture receiving a video message from someone who's been missing for weeks, telling you they're lost in time itself. The final video shows baby Z crying consolably while Rebecca sobs, begging for help from someone off camera. Someone who never responds. But the most disturbing discovery was hidden in the phone's location data. GPS coordinates that pointed to places that don't exist on any map. Coordinates that suggested Rebecca and Z had somehow traveled hundreds of miles underground, through solid rock, into spaces that couldn't possibly exist. The investigation was about to take a turn that would challenge everything we believe about reality itself. If you're still following this insane case, you're braver than most. Hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you gets exponentially more disturbing. Comment below. Do you believe it's possible to get lost in time? Because Rebecca Moe's case suggests it might be more common than we think. The Park Service was about to make a discovery that would force them to quietly change their safety protocols forever. What they found in the restricted archives would reveal that Rebecca and baby Z weren't the first to encounter whatever lurks in those mountains. Detective Sarah Kim made a request that changed everything. She demanded access to the park's complete missing persons files dating back 50 years. What she discovered made her question whether the Park Service had been covering up a pattern of impossible disappearances for decades. The files revealed 23 cases of people vanishing under similar circumstances. All had been dismissed as tragic accidents or deliberate disappearances. Imagine learning that your loved one's unique disappearance was actually part of a pattern that authorities had been hiding for half a century. Every case shared identical characteristics: sudden communication cutoffs, evidence found in impossible locations, and witnesses reporting temporal anomalies. In 1987, a family of 4 vanished during a day hike. Their car keys were found 3 years later, buried under a tree that forestry records showed had been planted only 6 months earlier. In 2003, a honeymooning couple disappeared on their second day in the park. Their wedding rings were discovered by hikers the following week, sitting on a picnic table at a visitor center, where security cameras showed no one had been for 72 hours. But the most disturbing case was from 2011. A solo hiker named James Chin vanished completely. His family received a phone call from his number 2 years later. The caller claimed to be James, begging for help, saying he was trapped between the seconds. The call lasted 47 minutes. Phone records confirmed it came from James's phone. How do you receive a phone call from someone who's been declared legally dead? How do you explain evidence that defies the laws of time and space? The Park Service buried these reports. Families were told their loved ones had simply gotten lost. But Detective Kim was about to uncover evidence that would blow the cover-up wide open. Because hidden in those classified files was a government study that acknowledged something terrifying about the Smoky Mountains. A study that used the words temporal distortions and dimensional anomalies in official government documents. Documents that suggested our government has known about these supernatural phenomena for decades and has been covering them up to protect tourism revenue. The classified documents Detective Kim uncovered were part of a 1978 study commissioned by the Department of Interior. Imagine learning that your government has known about supernatural dangers in public spaces and chose to keep them secret rather than protect you. The study, codenamed Project Kronos, documented temporal anomalies and spatial distortions in 7 national parks, with the Smoky Mountains showing the highest concentration of incidents. The report recommended immediate closure of affected areas. Instead, it was classified and buried for 45 years. Dr. Margaret Thorne, the study's lead scientist, had documented areas where time moved differently, where minutes could stretch into hours or compress into seconds. Her research team had used atomic clocks to prove that certain locations in the park experienced measurable time dilation. Dr. Thorne's final report included a desperate warning. These anomalies are growing stronger. Without intervention, we predict increasing rates of unexplained disappearances and reality distortions. Picture a government scientist begging her superiors to protect the public, only to have her warnings classified and ignored. The study identified specific, hot zones where the anomalies were strongest. Guess which trail was marked as the most dangerous? Devil's Backbone, the exact trail where Rebecca took her final photo. For over 40 years, park officials have quietly steered visitors away from these areas without explaining why. Rebecca never had a chance. But the most disturbing part of the classified documents was the appendix, a list of recommended containment protocols for when the anomalies interact with missing persons. Protocols that suggested the government believes some missing persons aren't dead. They're trapped in parallel dimensions, trying desperately to find their way home. How many families have grieved loved ones who might still be alive, just lost in time? As weeks turned to months, the official search for Rebecca and baby Z was scaled back. The case went cold. Rebecca's sister Sarah never stopped searching. Every weekend, she'd drive to the mountains, walking trails and calling their names until her voice gave out. Imagine that level of devotion. Imagine never giving up hope that your family is somehow still out there, waiting to be found. For 5 years, the mountains kept their secrets, until August 15th, 2024, when 2 college students made a discovery that would change everything. Jake Morrison and Lisa Chun were graduate students studying geological formations in the park's most remote areas. They were rappelling into a deep limestone crevice that had never been explored, taking rock samples for their thesis project. At 2:30 p.m., Lisa's headlamp illuminated something wedged deep in the narrowest part of the crevice. Picture being 30 feet underground in a crack barely wide enough for your body, when suddenly you see something that shouldn't exist. It was a pink diaper bag, pristine and perfectly preserved despite 5 years in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Baby Z's diaper bag. But the condition it was in would make forensic experts question the laws of physics. The bag looked like it had been placed there moments ago. The zippers worked perfectly. The fabric showed no weathering, and inside was something that would rewrite the entire case and prove that Rebecca and Z had experienced something beyond human understanding. When Jake and Lisa extracted the diaper bag from the crevice, they knew immediately they found something significant. Imagine opening a bag that belonged to a missing baby and finding evidence that challenges everything you believe about time and space. Inside the bag were 14 disposable diapers, each one timestamped with dates ranging from September 12th, 2019 to March 3rd, 2024. Used diapers spanning nearly 5 years, all perfectly preserved, all containing evidence that baby Z had somehow continued growing and developing while missing. The progression was clear. Newborn sizes in September 2019, gradually increasing to toddler sizes by 2024. But the most disturbing discovery was a baby bottle filled with fresh formula, still warm to the touch. Picture finding fresh, warm baby formula in a bag that's been missing for 5 years. How do you explain that? Dr. Elena Rodriguez's forensic analysis confirmed the impossible. The formula had been prepared less than 4 hours before the bag was discovered. Carbon dating of the diapers showed they were manufactured across different years, exactly matching their written timestamps. This means Rebecca had been caring for baby Z somewhere for 5 years, watching her daughter grow from infant to toddler, while trapped in what? Hidden in the bag's front pocket, wrapped in plastic, was a letter in Rebecca's handwriting. A letter that would explain everything. A letter that proved Rebecca and Z were still alive, but trapped in a version of reality that exists outside normal time. The letter began, Day 1847. Z took her first steps today. She'll never know her first word was Daddy, because she was looking at his picture when she said it. Can you imagine the heartbreak in those words? A mother watching her daughter's milestones while trapped in a nightmare beyond comprehension. But the final page of Rebecca's letter contained information that would make investigators realize this case was far from over. If you're still with me after these impossible revelations, you're about to hear the most disturbing part of Rebecca's story. Hit that like button if you think Rebecca and baby Z are still alive somewhere in those mountains, trapped between seconds. Comment below. If you could send a message to Rebecca right now, what would you tell her? Because based on what I'm about to read from her final letter, she might actually receive it. Rebecca's letter, written in increasingly desperate handwriting over what she claimed were 5 years, revealed the truth about the Smoky Mountains. Imagine writing a letter, knowing it might be your only chance to explain the impossible to the world you've been torn from. To whoever finds this, Z and I aren't dead. We're caught in what I can only describe as a pocket of time that moves differently from yours. We've encountered others here, families from different decades, all trapped in the same temporal loop. Z is 3 years old now. She's beautiful and smart and asks why we can't go home. I don't know how to explain that home is just out of reach, separated by seconds we can't cross. The hardest part is watching the park from here. We can see visitors hiking the trails, but they can't see us. We exist in the spaces between their moments. Picture a mother and child watching the world continue without them, invisible and helpless, trapped in time itself. I've learned that the anomalies are caused by something deep underground, a mineral formation that affects local space-time. The government knows. They've always known. There are others here who've been trapped for decades. A family from 1987 helped me understand how to find food and shelter that exists in our time-space. Tell my sister Sarah that I love her. Tell her that Z's first word was Daddy, and that she looks just like Marcus. Tell her we're not suffering, we're just elsewhere. How do you process that? How do you tell a grieving family that their loved ones are alive but unreachable? But Rebecca's final paragraph contains something that changed everything about how investigators viewed the case. She wrote, "I've found a way to send things back to your time. Objects can cross between the spaces if placed in the right locations during temporal flux events. If you're reading this, it means my system works, which means I might be able to send Z home." The letter ended with coordinates and a desperate plea. Check these locations during the next full moon. If my calculations are right, you'll find something that proves we're still fighting to come home. Those coordinates led investigators to a discovery that would prove Rebecca's system worked, and that she and Z were still desperately trying to escape their temporal prison. Acting on Rebecca's coordinates, search teams investigated 6 specific locations during the October 2024 full moon. Imagine being the searcher who finds proof that missing persons are still alive, still fighting, still hoping after 5 years. At location 3, a hidden cave behind a waterfall, they found a makeshift altar covered with items that shouldn't exist. Fresh flowers, warm food, and a photo of baby Z that showed her at approximately 3 years old, exactly matching Rebecca's letter timeline. The photo showed the beautiful toddler with her father's eyes and her mother's smile, sitting in what appeared to be a forest clearing filled with impossible light. But the most disturbing discovery was a recording device, still warm, containing a message recorded just hours before they found it. Rebecca's voice, older and more tired than in her original videos, speaking directly to the searchers she somehow knew would find her message. If you can hear this, please don't stop looking for us. Z asks about her Aunt Sarah every day. She knows she has family in the real world who love her. I figured out how to send objects across the temporal barrier, but I can't send ourselves. We need help from your side. We need someone to understand the science and find a way to pull us back. The recording ended with something that gave investigators their first real hope. I've been working with others trapped here. We think we know how to create a permanent bridge between the times. But we need you to believe in the impossible. Rebecca Moe's voice, desperate but determined, delivered one final message that would change how investigators approach the case forever. Tell the world our story. Rebecca's voice pleaded. Tell them that the mountains are beautiful but hungry. Tell them that love transcends time itself, and that we're still here, still hoping, still fighting to come home. As of today, Rebecca Moe and her daughter Z remain missing, but not gone. Their story continues in the spaces between seconds, in the heartbeat between moments. If this case has affected you the way it affected me, subscribe and share this story. Because somewhere in those mountains, a mother and daughter are waiting for the world to believe in the impossible. Remember, love finds a way, even across time itself. And sometimes, the impossible is just the truth we're not ready to accept.